Listen, the first $100,000 is a bastard. Let me just say it plainly. And until you understand why it feels impossible, you'll keep spinning your wheels while everyone else races past you. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through these fundamental principles of wealth accumulation that most people never grasp. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover exactly why your savings feel pointless right now and how to break through that crushing barrier that keeps 90% of people trapped in financial mediocrity forever. So before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because I want to know who's ready to finally understand the mathematics of wealth that the world doesn't teach you. Here's why your first dollar feels worthless, but your $100,000 works like magic. You know what nobody tells you? That starting from zero is the cruelest joke capitalism plays on the ambitious. I was born in 1912, right into a world that would soon collapse into the Great Depression, and I watched my family, educated, hardworking, decent people, struggle not because they were lazy, but because they started with nothing, and nothing compounds to nothing. That's the brutal arithmetic nobody wants to discuss at dinner parties. When you're scraping together your first $1,000, earning maybe $20 or $30 in annual returns, it feels absolutely pointless, doesn't it? You look at that pathetic number and think, what's the point? This will never amount to anything. I might as well enjoy my money now. And that's exactly where most people quit. They give up before the magic even has a chance to work because they're comparing their beginning to someone else's middle or end. But here's what I learned. Studying economics my entire life, and this is critical, compounding is not linear, it's exponential. That means the first years feel like you're digging through concrete with a plastic spoon. Miserable, exhausting, seemingly futile. But once you cross certain thresholds, the texture changes completely. It becomes like slicing through butter with a hot knife. Think about it mathematically. If you have $1,000 and earn 10% annually, you make $100. Exciting? Hardly. That won't change your life. It won't even cover a decent dinner. But when you have $100,000 earning that same 10%, you're making $10,000 a year without lifting a finger. Suddenly the turns become meaningful. Suddenly you can see the machine working. Suddenly it feels worth continuing. The problem, and this is what destroys most people, is that human beings are wired for immediate gratification. We evolved to seek immediate rewards because for most of human history, tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. You found food, you ate it, you didn't save it for compound growth over 30 years. But modern wealth accumulation requires you to fight every instinct evolution gave you. You must delay gratification in ways that feel unnatural, even painful. I'll tell you something else that makes the first $100,000 brutally difficult. Your expenses feel enormous relative to your income. When you're making $40,000 or $50,000 a year, trying to save $10,000 annually means cutting your lifestyle by 2025. That hurts. That means saying no to vacations your friends are taking, driving an older car while your neighbor gets a new one, living in a smaller apartment when you think you deserve better. The psychological pain of that sacrifice is why most people never make it. But here's the secret that changed everything for me. Discipline at the beginning creates freedom at the end. The habits you build getting to $100,000 are the exact same habits that will make you wealthy beyond that. Living below your means, saving consistently, investing rationally, ignoring the noise, these aren't temporary sacrifices, they're permanent advantages. Most people think they'll develop discipline later when they have more money. That's backwards. You develop discipline now, and the money follows. You know what question people never ask themselves? Am I willing to live like nobody else now so I can live like nobody else later? Because that's the trade. You can have comfort now and struggle later, or you can have discipline now and freedom later. There's no third option. The universe doesn't negotiate on this point. When I was starting out as a young economist, I didn't make much, but I saved anyway. I invested in sensible things. I didn't try to impress people I didn't care about with things I didn't need. And slowly, painfully slowly, the pile grew. Every year it got a little bigger. Every year compounding did slightly more work. And eventually, without any dramatic breakthrough or lucky break, I crossed that threshold where the machine started working for me instead of against me. Here's another brutal truth about the first $100,000. There are no shortcuts. Everyone wants the hack, the trick, the secret formula. They want to buy some hot stock that'll 10x in a year. They want to find a cryptocurrency that'll make them rich overnight. But those aren't wealth strategies, they're lottery tickets. And lottery tickets statistically are for people who are bad at math. The only reliable path is the boring one. Consistent saving, sensible investing, and patience that most people simply don't have. The poison that's killing your savings, and you don't even know you're drinking it. Now let me tell you about the deadliest disease in personal finance, and it's not debt, though debt is terrible, it's envy. Envy is the only sin where you get absolutely nothing out of committing it. Think about that. Gluttony, you get a good meal. Lust, you get some temporary pleasure. Greed might actually make you richer if you channel it properly. But envy, you just feel miserable watching someone else succeed while you accomplish nothing yourself. I've spent decades studying human behavior and economic decision-making, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that envy destroys more financial futures than market crashes ever could. Why? Because it makes you spend money you don't have on things you don't want to impress people you don't even like. Your neighbor gets a new car. Suddenly your perfectly functional vehicle feels inadequate. Your colleague takes a European vacation. Suddenly you think you deserve one too. And there goes your savings rate, evaporating in the name of keeping up appearances. Here's what's insidious about envy. It's socially reinforced. We live in a culture that celebrates consumption and status. Social media has made it 1,000 times worse. Everyone's posting their highlight reel, their vacations, their purchases, their apparent success. And you're sitting there looking at your modest savings account thinking you're falling behind. But you know what you're not seeing? The credit card debt, the car loans, the mortgages on houses they can't afford, the financial fragility hiding behind the Instagram facade. I knew a brilliant lawyer once, sharp as they come, who couldn't stand that other attorneys were getting richer faster than he was. Instead of sticking to his solid practice, he jumped into every hot deal and speculative investment he could find. He wasn't trying to make money. He was trying to beat everyone around him. And that emotional need, that envy, destroyed his judgment. He lost everything, not because he was stupid, but because he let envy override his intelligence. You want to know how Warren Buffett and I avoided this trap? We simply refused to play the comparison game. We admired some people, we learned from some people, but we never envied them. What would be the point? If someone has a bigger house or a fancier car, good for them. I don't want those things anyway. I want financial independence. I want the freedom to say no to anyone. I want to sleep well at night knowing I'm not fragile. Those are incompatible with trying to look rich. Here's the mathematics of envy. Every dollar you spend trying to impress others is a dollar that can't compound for you. If you save $10,000 a year for 10 years and invest it reasonably, you'll have a meaningful pile that can grow for decades. If you waste $10,000 a year trying to maintain appearances, you'll have nothing but memories and debt. Which future do you want? Because you're choosing right now, whether you realize it or not. The cure for envy is understanding a simple principle. Most people who look rich aren't actually rich. They're leveraged. They're living on borrowed money and borrowed time. They look like kings until the economy shifts. Then they're exposed as paupers in expensive clothes. I saw this in the Great Depression. I saw it in 2008. And I'll see it again in the next crisis because human nature doesn't change. True wealth is invisible. It's not the car, the house, the watch. It's the assets you own that nobody sees. It's the investments compounding quietly in the background. It's the freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you. That's what you should be building. Not a lifestyle that impresses strangers at traffic lights. So here's your assignment, and I'm deadly serious about this. Identify one expense in your life that exists purely to impress others or keep up with someone else. Maybe it's a car payment. Maybe it's dining out at expensive restaurants you don't even enjoy. Maybe it's clothing you buy for status rather than function. Cut it. Redirect that money into your savings. Feel the psychological discomfort of not keeping up. That discomfort is the price of future freedom, and it's a bargain compared to the alternative of lifetime financial mediocrity. Because I'll tell you what happens when you kill envy. You save more. And when you save more, you hit that first $100,000 faster. And when you hit that first $100,000, you laugh at all the people still trapped in the keeping up with the Joneses game. They'll still be financing their lifestyles at 70 while you're financially independent. Is that worth enduring their judgment now? I think so. The $1 million mistake I made that you're probably making right now. Let me confess something that still bothers me after all these years. I sold too early, and it probably cost me more money than all my other mistakes combined. This isn't easy to admit, especially for someone who spent his career teaching economics. But it's the truth, and you need to hear it, because I guarantee you're making the same mistake. Decades ago, I found a wonderful business trading at a reasonable price. I liked the economics, I liked the management, I liked everything about it. So I bought in. Then the stock doubled and I thought I was being clever. I thought I was being disciplined. I sold, patted myself on the back, and watched as that company went on to multiply 10, maybe 20 times over the following decades. Do you know what that little act of impatience cost me? Tens of millions of dollars, maybe more. I don't even want to calculate it anymore because it's too painful. Here's what nobody tells you about investing. The hard part isn't buying. Any fool can buy something. The hard part is sitting while nothing happens, sitting while the market panics, sitting while everyone around you is trading frantically trying to outsmart each other, sitting while your brain screams at you to do something, anything, because doing nothing feels irresponsible. Warren has this saying that his favorite holding period is forever. People think that's just a cute phrase. It's not. It's the rational response to finding something great. If you own a piece of a wonderful business run by honest, capable people, why would you sell it just because the price went up? That's like selling a winning racehorse halfway through the race. Sure, you lock in a profit, but you give up the real fortune. The psychology behind this mistake is fascinating and dangerous. When you buy something and it goes up, you feel smart, you feel validated. And then your brain says, lock in the gain, take the profit, you'll feel even smarter. But that's your dopamine system talking, not your rational mind. Your dopamine system wants immediate rewards. It doesn't care about long-term compounding. It wants the hit now. Most investors, and this is supported by every study ever done, buy at tops and sell at bottoms. They can't sit still. They have the attention span of goldfish. They're constantly trading, constantly adjusting, constantly trying to optimize. And all that activity destroys returns. If you want to beat 90% of investors, here's the dirty secret. Just sit. Sit on your savings. Sit on your investments. Sit on your hands. Do nothing most of the time. I learned this lesson the expensive way, and it scarred me forever. After that mistake, I became much slower to sell. I started asking different questions. Instead of, has this gone up enough? I asked, has the business changed? Instead of, should I take profits? I asked, can I name a better place to put this money? Usually the answer was no. So I sat. And that stillness made me far wealthier than all my activity ever could have. Here's the paradox that'll blow your mind. Activity is the enemy of returns. The more you trade, the worse you do. The more you tinker, the more you hurt yourself. The financial industry doesn't want you to know this because they make money from your activity. Every trade, every transaction, they get a cut. But you get worse results. There's a famous study that looked at trading accounts over years. The investors who did the best were dead, literally dead, so they couldn't trade. The second best performers were people who forgot they had accounts. The worst performers were active traders. Think about that. Doing nothing outperformed doing something. Death outperformed life, at least in financial terms. So what's the lesson? If you're lucky enough, and it takes both luck and skill to find a great investment, don't be in a hurry to part with it. Those opportunities are rare. Maybe you'll only find a handful in your entire life. When you find one, hold it like your financial future depends on it, because it does. Let compounding work. Let time pass. Let the business do what great businesses do. Grow, compound, and make you wealthy slowly. I know what you're thinking, but what if it goes down? What if I lose my gains? Here's the answer. If the business itself hasn't changed, price fluctuations are noise, they're market psychology, not economic reality. If you own a piece of a business earning 15% on capital year after year, who cares if the stock price bounces around? The business is still compounding for you underneath all that noise. The truth is this: my impatience made me rich slower than I should have been. But at least I learned the lesson before it was too late. The question is, will you? Because right now, as you're building toward that first $100,000, you need to understand that the same patience that helps you accumulate it is the patience that'll multiply it afterward. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a financial strategy. And it's one that separates the wealthy from everyone else. The 3 simple words that will make you richer than 90% of people. Now I'm going to share something that might save you from decades of expensive mistakes. 3 words that changed my life and can change yours, I don't know. That's it, those 3 simple words that most people are too proud or too stupid to say. And that pride, that inability to admit ignorance, cost them fortunes. We live in a world where everyone's an expert on everything. They read one article about technology stocks, and suddenly they're the next Warren Buffett. They watch one YouTube video about real estate, and they're ready to quit their job and flip houses. They hear one podcast about cryptocurrency, and they're mortgaging their home to buy digital coins they don't understand. This epidemic of false confidence is bankrupting people faster than any market crash ever could. I've spent over 60 years studying economics, finance, and human behavior. And you know what I've learned? The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. The smartest people I've ever met were the ones who admitted ignorance quickly and often. They weren't ashamed of their limitations. They were protected by them. Because if you don't understand something, you don't invest in it. And if you don't invest in things you don't understand, you avoid catastrophic losses. Warren and I built our success on a principle we call the circle of competence. It's simple. We know what we know and we know what we don't know. And we stay inside our circle. We've passed on thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of investment opportunities because they fell outside our understanding. People think that's a weakness. It's not. It's our superpower. Because while everyone else is gambling on things they don't understand, we're making calculated decisions about things we do understand. Here's what happens when you can't say, I don't know. You make confident bets based on shallow understanding. You read some analyst report, you hear some expert on television, you see some chart with projections, and you convince yourself you understand the situation. But you don't. You have information, which is not the same as understanding. Information is easy to get. Understanding takes years of study, pattern recognition, and often painful experience. I'll give you a concrete example. For decades, people told Warren and me we were idiots for avoiding technology stocks. You're missing the future, they said. Don't you understand the internet? And we'd respond, no, we don't. And because we don't understand it well enough to value it, we're not investing. We missed some winners, absolutely. But we also avoided all of the catastrophic losers. And in investing, avoiding losers is more important than picking winners. The irony is that admitting ignorance makes you stronger, not weaker. When you say, I don't know, you protect yourself from expensive mistakes. You keep your capital safe. You preserve your ability to act when opportunities you actually understand come along. But most people can't do this because their ego gets in the way. They want to look smart. They want to impress others. They want to be part of every conversation. So they pretend to knowledge they don't have, and it costs them everything. Here's a brutal truth from psychology. The less people know about something, the more confident they are about it. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The real experts are usually the most cautious, the most uncertain, because they understand complexity. The amateurs are the confident ones because they don't know enough to understand what they don't know. So if you find yourself feeling really confident about an investment or financial decision, that should be a warning sign. Real confidence in investing is quiet, careful, and surrounded by caveats. So how do you protect yourself from your own overconfidence? By building that circle of competence deliberately and honestly. Ask yourself, what do I actually understand well enough to make meaningful predictions about? For most people, the honest answer is not much. And that's okay. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to understand a few things deeply enough to make intelligent decisions about them. Everything else, you simply say, I don't know, and move on. I'll tell you something else. Humility is profitable. The investors who acknowledge uncertainty, who build in margins of safety, who refuse to bet everything on their predictions, those are the ones who survive long enough to compound wealth. The overconfident ones, they blow up. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually their overconfidence meets reality, and reality always wins that. So here's my challenge to you. Try to say, I don't know, at least 10 times today. Try it about investments, about economics, about anything outside your genuine expertise. Notice how uncomfortable it feels. That discomfort is your ego protesting. But push through it, because on the other side of that discomfort is safety. And in the long game of wealth building, safety compounds just as surely as returns do. Why your paycheck will never make you rich? But this will now, we're getting to something fundamental that most people never understand. The difference between thinking like an employee and thinking like an owner. And this distinction, more than anything else, determines whether you'll spend your life comfortable or whether you'll build real lasting wealth. I started as a lawyer, billing hours, collecting fees, trying to impress partners. I was good at it. But one day I had a realization that changed everything. If I kept trading time for money, I'd never be more than comfortable. I'd have a nice life, but I'd never have real wealth. I'd never have independence. I'd be dancing to someone else's tune until I dropped dead. So I quit. People thought I was crazy. Why give up a stable career? Because stability is often an illusion, and because I wanted something more valuable than stability. I wanted ownership. Here's what employees think about. How do I get a raise? How do I get promoted? How do I impress my boss? Here's what owners think about. How do I build assets that work for me? How do I create systems that compound value over time? How do I become less dependent on my own labor? See the difference? One mindset is about climbing a ladder someone else built. The other is about building your own ladder. Or better yet, building an escalator that carries you up whether you're walking or not. The irony is that the employee mindset feels safer. The paycheck arrives every 2 weeks. Your employer handles the complexity. You just show up, do your work, go home. But the long-term mathematics are brutal. Inflation eats your wages. Bureaucracy caps your upside. One corporate restructuring can eliminate your security overnight. You're building your entire financial life on someone else's foundation, and that foundation can crumble without warning. Ownership feels riskier because you put your own money at stake. You take responsibility. There's no safety net. But the upside is uncapped. You capture the compounding. You build real independence. You stop begging for raises and start making your own rules. And most importantly, you align your success with time rather than just labor. Your assets can grow while you sleep. Your paycheck can't. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying everyone should quit their job and start a business. Most businesses fail. Most entrepreneurs go broke. But everyone can think like an owner even while they're employed. How? By taking every dollar you can spare and converting it into ownership. Stock in great companies, real estate, assets that generate value independent of your labor. That's ownership thinking applied to regular life. The key is asking yourself constantly, am I building an asset or just selling my hours? If you're just selling hours, you're stuck in a linear model. Work more, earn more. Stop working, earn nothing. If you're building assets, you're in an exponential model. Work now, earn forever. Compound over time, become wealthy eventually. The difference in outcomes over 30 or 40 years is astronomical. I've watched this play out thousands of times over my long career. The richest lawyers weren't the ones billing the most hours. They were the ones taking equity in their clients' businesses. The richest employees weren't the hardest workers. They were the ones who saved their salary and bought ownership stakes in great companies. Same effort, different mindset, completely different results. Warren and I never envied high-income professionals who had nothing to show for it at 60. We saw doctors, executives, professionals of all kinds making $500 zero or more per year and ending up broke because they spent it all. They had income but not assets. They had cash flow but not ownership. They looked successful but were actually fragile. One health crisis, one job loss, one market shift, and they crumbled. Here's the blunt truth. Titles fade, ownership compounds. That promotion you're chasing might feel important now, but in 20 years it'll be irrelevant. The shares you bought and held, those will have compounded into something meaningful. The small business you started and patiently built, that'll be worth real money. The paycheck you spend impressing people, that'll be gone without a trace. So if you're serious about that first $100,000 and everything that comes after, you need to make a fundamental shift in identity. Stop thinking of yourself primarily as an employee and start thinking of yourself as a capital allocator who happens to have a job. Your job provides the seed capital, but it's what you do with that capital, how you invest it, how you protect it, how you let it compound, that determines your financial destiny. What the Great Depression taught me that every generation forgets. I need to tell you something that shaped every financial decision I ever made. I was born in 1912, which means I came of age during the Great Depression. And if you want to understand why I think about money the way I do, you need to understand what I saw during those years. Because the Depression wasn't just an economic event, it was a complete social collapse. And once you've witnessed that, you never think about money casually again. My grandfather went bankrupt. My father, a successful lawyer, watched his practice crumble as clients couldn't pay. People we knew, educated, respectable, hardworking people, lost everything. Homes, farms, dignity. If you wanted to understand human fragility, you didn't need a textbook. You just looked out the window. Men who walked proud one year were standing in bread lines the next. Women patched clothing until it was more thread than fabric. Children went to work before they hit their teenage years. That burns into your soul. The first lesson I learned was this: money equals survival, not luxury, not yachts or private jets or fancy vacations. Survival. When cash dries up in a society, you see how quickly everything civilized collapses. You see families torn apart. You see suicides. You see the veneer of prosperity stripped away to reveal how precarious everything really was. And I learned a rule I've never broken. Never be dependent on the kindness of strangers, governments, or creditors. Depend on your own savings, because when crisis comes, nobody's rescuing you. The second lesson was about debt. Debt killed more people financially than the stock market crash did. Families with no debt got by, even if barely. Families with debt went under. They lost farms that had been in their family for generations. They lost homes. They lost everything. I watched this happen again in 2008, the same disease, different decade. People borrowing against houses they couldn't afford, then acting shocked when it collapsed. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and the rhythm is always the same. Debt plus crisis equals catastrophe. Here's what most people today don't understand. They've never experienced real hardship. They've lived through the longest period of prosperity in human history. They think recessions mean their investment portfolio goes down 20% for a year. They don't understand what it means when the entire financial system seizes up, when banks fail, when currency becomes worthless, when jobs disappear by the millions. So they take risks that someone who lived through the Depression would never take. They lever up. They borrow aggressively. They assume the good times last forever. That assumption is dangerous. The third lesson was about resilience. Plenty of brilliant people went broke in the Depression because they were leveraged, proud, or rigid. The survivors weren't always the smartest. They were the most conservative. They saved. They stayed liquid. They didn't bet everything on being right. They built what I call a margin of safety into everything they did. That concept became central to my entire investment philosophy. Always assume things can go wrong, because they will. Warren and I were both shaped by that era, even though he's younger and didn't experience it firsthand like I did. It made us allergic to debt. It made us skeptical of easy money. It made us obsessed with durability over optimization. We don't want maximum returns. We want returns we can sustain through any environment. We don't want to go back to zero ever because we understand how hard it is to climb back from nothing. Here's the paradox that confuses people. The Depression made me cautious, but it also made me optimistic. How? Because I watched America climb out of it. I saw recovery, rebuilding, extraordinary growth. That taught me that capitalism works if you give it time. So I came out of that period with two beliefs that seem contradictory but aren't. Always expect hardship and always believe in eventual recovery. Pessimism protects you. Optimism enriches you. Together, They keep you alive and compounding through anything. The fourth lesson, and this one, psychological financial misery is contagious. In the Depression, desperation spread like a disease. Suicides led to more suicides. Bankruptcies triggered more bankruptcies. Panic fed on itself until entire communities were consumed by it. That taught me that money problems aren't just financial. They bleed into everything. Your marriage, your health, your sanity, your children's futures. Financial discipline isn't just about wealth. It's about protecting everything else you value. Now, here's what frustrates me about modern culture. Every generation has to relearn these lessons the hard way. In the 1980s, people forgot and over-leveraged. Crash. In the late 1990s, they forgot again and bid internet stocks to absurd levels. Crash. In the mid-2000s, they forgot again and turned housing into a speculative bubble. Crash. And now, we're in the longest bull market in history, and everyone's confident again. Debt levels are astronomical. Speculation is rampant. And most people think it's different this time. It's never different. The cycle always repeats because human nature doesn't change. So here's what you need to understand as you build toward that first $100,000. You're not just building wealth, you're building resilience. You're building the capacity to survive when everything goes wrong. You're building a foundation that won't collapse when the economy shifts. That's why I'm so insistent about avoiding debt, maintaining savings, investing conservatively. Not because I'm timid, but because I've seen what happens to people who aren't prepared when the world turns upside down. The Depression taught me to live as if another crisis could come tomorrow, but invest as if prosperity will return eventually. That paradox, preparing for the worst while believing in ultimate recovery, is the only way to stay sane and solvent through decades of unpredictable events. And if you think it can't happen again, if you think modern central banks and governments have eliminated the business cycle, you're exactly the kind of fool that history loves to humiliate. Stay humble, stay prepared, and let that preparation compound into genuine security over time. Now let me tie this all together with the three poisons that'll keep you poor forever: debt, drama, and dumb people. If you want to stay broke, it's simple. Load up on credit cards, surround yourself with toxic relationships, and take advice from idiots. That combination has ruined more lives than any stock market crash. I made a different choice early, and it's made all the difference. First, debt. I've beaten this to death already, but it bears repeating. Debt is a noose. You don't feel it tightening immediately, but it always does eventually. Credit cards, payday loans, car payments, mortgages you can't afford, different names, same trap. Most people go broke not because they never made money, but because they owed more than they could manage. Warren and I built Berkshire without the leverage Wall Street loves. That's why we sleep well. If you need debt to make your plan work, your plan is terrible. Second, drama. You'd be shocked. How many intelligent people ruin their lives chasing chaos? Bad marriages, foolish lawsuits, toxic business partners, unnecessary conflicts. They spend energy on soap operas instead of compounding. I had my share of real tragedy in life. I buried a child, lost an eye, went through divorce. Life handed me enough genuine hardship. I had zero appetite for manufactured drama, so I cut it out ruthlessly. Don't pick fights. Don't sue unless absolutely necessary. Don't waste time on people who drain you. Life's hard enough without volunteering for extra misery. Third, dumb people. This one's underrated. Who you spend time with determines 90% of your outcomes. If you invest with idiots, work for idiots, or marry idiots, you'll pay dearly. The world is full of people who are unreliable, dishonest, or simply stupid. And if you can't spot them, you'll suffer with them. Warren and I had an absolute rule. We only deal with people we like, admire, and trust. No exceptions. We passed on opportunities because the people involved were jerks or fools. Costly short term? Maybe. But long term, it saved us from disasters we can't even count. The same principle applies to friends. You don't need many. A few rational, trustworthy companions will do. The rest, dead weight. Cut them loose. People think I'm exaggerating, but avoiding debt, drama, and dumb people has been more important to my success than finding genius investments. Because even the best investments won't save you if your personal life is a circus. Look around. Half of America's problems could be solved if people stop buying crap they don't need with money. They don't have to impress people they don't like. But that requires discipline. And discipline is the rarest commodity in the world. So here's the Munger prescription, and I'm deadly serious. Don't borrow what you can repay, don't create problems you don't need, and don't associate with fools. Do those three things, and you'll be ahead of 90% of humanity. You'll have the peace of mind to let compounding work for you instead of constantly fighting fires. Here's something else most people never consider. Trouble compounds just like money does. One bad relationship leads to another. One foolish debt leads to more. One toxic person introduces you to more toxic people. It's negative compounding. So when you eliminate these poisons from your life, you're not just avoiding one mistake, you're avoiding chains of mistakes that would have destroyed your next 20 years. That's the real value of discipline. It protects your future self from your present self's stupidity. So as you build toward that first $100,000, remember, you're not just accumulating money, you're eliminating obstacles. Every dollar of debt you pay off is compound interest working for you instead of against you. Every source of drama you eliminate is energy you can redirect toward productive things. Every fool you remove from your life is one less person pulling you toward poor decisions. Addition by subtraction. Sometimes the best move is just removing what's hurting you. The truth is, and I can say this at my age without apology, I didn't become wealthy because I was smarter than everyone. I became wealthy because I was more boring than everyone. I avoided debt when it was tempting. I stayed away from drama when it was exciting. I cut off fools when it was socially awkward. Those negative decisions, what I refused to do, mattered more than all my positive decisions combined. So don't just think about what you're building, think about what you're avoiding. Because in the long run, what you don't do matters just as much as what you do. If you can eliminate those three poisons and combine that with consistent saving and patient investing, the first $100,000 becomes inevitable. Not easy, not fast, but inevitable. And that's the best word in finance, inevitable. Because once something becomes inevitable rather than hopeful, you've won. The rest is just waiting for time to do its work. So cut the debt, cut the drama, cut the fools, and watch what happens to your financial trajectory. I promise you'll be shocked how much easier everything becomes when you remove what's holding you back. And here we are at the end, and I want to leave you with the simplest, most important principle I learned in 99 years of life. Spend less than you earn, period. If you can't do that, nothing I've said matters. Nothing anyone says will help you. You can't outinvest stupidity. You can't compound what doesn't exist. The first $100,000 is hard precisely because it forces you to master this principle when it hurts the most. I've seen brilliant people, doctors, lawyers, executives making millions, end up broke because they couldn't grant continuous this simple arithmetic. Money in minus money out equals savings. Kill that gap and you kill your future. It sounds harsh, but it's liberating because it means you don't need genius, you don't need perfect timing, you don't need luck. You just need to spend less than you earn every single year without exception. The first $100,000 is hell. I won't lie to you about that. It feels pointless. It feels slow. It feels like you're sacrificing while everyone else is enjoying life. But it's also the only real test. If you can get there, everything afterward becomes easier. If you can't, no strategy, no guru, no market miracle will save you. So the question isn't whether you want to be rich. Everyone wants that. The question is whether you're willing to suffer now so you don't suffer later. Because that's the choice. Discipline now or desperation later. There's no third option. So here's what you need to do starting today. Save until it hurts. Invest what you save. Sit on your investments longer than feels comfortable and repeat that boring process for decades. Don't chase hot tips. Don't try to get rich quick. Don't compare yourself to others. Just focus on your pile, your savings rate, your discipline. Do that, and one day, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10, you'll cross $100,000 and you'll understand everything I've been saying. Because at that moment, compounding stops being theory and becomes reality. The boulder finally rolls downhill instead of uphill. The machine works for you instead of against you. And when you get there, don't stop, because the next $100,000 will come faster. And the one after that, faster still. That's the magic and the irony. The beginning is unbearable, the middle is tolerable, and the end is inevitable. You just have to survive long enough to let the mathematics work. So hit that like button if this made sense to you. Subscribe so you don't miss what I share next, and tell me in the comments, what's the one expense you're going to cut this week to accelerate your path to that first $100,000? Because talk is cheap, but action changes everything. Remember, I'm 99 years old, and I'm telling you from nearly a century of experience, the principles don't change. Human nature doesn't change, and mathematics doesn't negotiate. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Sit on your ass and let compounding do the heavy lifting. It's not glamorous, but it's the only advice that actually works. Now get to work and stop looking for shortcuts that don't exist.